Hello, everybody. Welcome to this We Are Developers live event on this wonderful, hopefully sunny afternoon. It's on DevOps Maturity Check, a way to balance autonomy and alignment. And this is an interesting topic because it takes you on a further journey once you decided to go down DevOps way. Before we start and I hand you over to Martin, there are some things I want you to know. There is a code of conduct which regulates everything with this event. It basically says behave nice, but we have a full version of it which you will watch now. It's like on an airplane. So, thank you for enduring this. I promise I will make my colleagues dance to the music next time. And hello, Martin. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Yeah. So I will turn off my camera and microphone now and listen to your voice. Maybe a tip to the audience, let us know where you are from in the chat. So Martin knows where you're watching from.
Exactly. Thanks a lot. Now, the best architectures, requirements, and design, they emerge from self-organizing teams. These principles from the Agile Manifesto inspired me quite a lot. And when we started at Swisscom, when we started the DevOps journey, it was basically my mantra to really follow that. And for that reason, I mean, Swisscom was a company coming from top-down projects and waterfall projects, really implementing with fixed targets. We thought like we just give the teams the full autonomy and they will know best what it's all about DevOps. What we realized then is also known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is basically the fact that people didn't have that much DevOps experience yet. They were constantly overestimating their DevOps maturity. And therefore, we figured out that we somehow need to balance this autonomy of the teams, and we need to bring some alignment that we can share a common understanding of what DevOps is and what we mean by DevOps. And this is what this talk is about. It's a talk about how we at Swisscom implemented the maturity check to balance autonomy and alignment. My name is Martin Tallmann. I do have a background as a software engineer and project manager. And since 2014, I'm helping Swisscom on the DevOps transformation journey. At the moment, I work as Agile enabling coach. Oh, by the way, Swisscom is probably the largest Swiss telco operator. We have round about 19,000 employees and offer services like IT service, telephony, internet, broadband, mobile, and TV services. And I'm supporting Swisscom as an Agile enabling coach. This is kind of in-house coaching, so I help other teams in growing their maturity. Besides that, I'm a huge fan of the community, DevOps community. For that reason, I'm hosting a DevOps meetup in Zurich. So if this Corona crisis is gone and you're in Zurich, feel free to join one of our meetups. And I'm also the co-organizer of DevOps Days in Zurich. And beside that, I'm also teaching at the University of Applied Science in Lucerne for the DevOps topics. Now, for those of you, I guess, those of you that are joining using this tool, I guess you already use the chat. That's really nice. So really would be happy if you engage in the chat as well. There's a Q&A mode as well. So feel free to type in any questions. And I try, even during the presentation, I try to switch to those questions so that I can follow them up. If I miss one question, probably, then I'm pretty sure that we have enough time at the end of the presentation to type in this question. Now, first thing I would like to ask you, considering your experience with DevOps, if you have to kind of quote that from 0, meaning DevOps, what's that? Never heard about it, to 5, I'm the full expert of DevOps and could probably be one of the co-authors of the DevOps handbook. So just type in, thanks a lot, Pascal. Okay, so where on this grade from 0 to 5, where would you rate yourself related to DevOps? That will help me a bit to know the audience as well. Okay, we have another relatively low score. So do we have any DevOps specialists in the talk as well? Okay, going up to 3, yeah, that's pretty good. That's good. Okay, so this is about the maturity check, and one important thing to mention is we decided to implement this maturity check, and it's always good to know why do you implement such a check. And our target for the maturity check is we really wanted, I guess, if you are on a DevOps journey, so if you implement those DevOps principles, this is not something you can achieve with one training. So it's not something you just go and then you're a DevOps expert. This is a continuous journey. So it will be something that will take quite a while to achieve. And for that reason, I guess one of the biggest goals for us was that teams, that development teams, that they are really on a continuous learning journey, that they do not stop gaining more and more experience. This was one side, so this continuous learning. And then on the other side, we also want to have a common understanding, so a shared understanding over the entire company, so that if we talk about DevOps, we talk about the same thing. And last but not least, I mean, we are a pretty big organization. We wanted to promote the networking. So to make sure that if one team made good experiences in one area, that they share this knowledge and give this knowledge to other teams as well. And this is the main goal that we wanted to achieve with the maturity check. And to mention here, this is also something which is probably a bit important. Soon as you start with such a check, and as soon as you have numbers behind it and say like, oh, I'm on a maturity level 3 or something like that, then sometimes management stops in and they say like, oh, that's great. We have a figure here to use that for measuring performance on a team or something like that. And this was, and to be really clear here, we didn't want to go in this direction. It is not a performance management tool. It's not a tool to kind of measure the learning process. It's more to emphasize and to encourage the team to really learn constantly. Okay, I said one of the goals that we had is to have a shared understanding. And if you want to achieve a shared understanding, then you also need to know what you talk about when you talk about DevOps. So in the company, you need to have you need to define what your understanding of DevOps is. And in our case, this is something we worked on at the beginning of the transformation. we worked on quite a lot. At this point in time, it was basically only the Phoenix project that was available from a literature point of view. And therefore, we had to kind of figure out and define what we as Swisscom understand by DevOps. And I guess one of the things that turned out to be quite helpful and to turn out to be quite good is that we always took quite a holistic approach on our DevOps understanding. So for us, it was one thing, of course, it's the technical side of things. So you need to have those technical capabilities that you all know, or you probably heard about around the DevOps topic. Second thing is culture. I guess you can learn technology, but changing culture is much more different. And the third thing is about processes. And I go into this a bit just to give you the understanding of what we talk about when we talk about DevOps. The first thing, the technical side, this is, we created kind of a DevOps reference model, and we defined like in the middle and most important is an interdisciplinary team that can work as self-organized and as autonomous as possible. And around are 6 capabilities that they need to master to be able to do DevOps. This is collaborative development, continuous testing, continuous release and development, continuous monitoring, continuous customer feedback and optimization, and last but not least, continuous business planning. And when explaining how we implemented the maturity model, I will come in more detail to those topics. So this was the technical side. With this technical side, there was also lots with tools that support you in this area. And the other side is the culture side. So we figured out if we go to a DevOps journey, then we need to change the way we collaborate together, and we need to have a new culture. And this is something that is quite important, the culture side that impacts like 3 dimensions that where we need to change. And the first dimension is on the individual level. So I guess Swisscom was like years ago, it was state-owned. And from that point of view, we still have some employees that worked when it was state-owned in Swisscom. And some of them, not many, but some of them still probably have an attitude of saying like, I'm here, I'm an employee, and my boss will tell me what I need to do. So he will take care that I have the right education and so on. And if we talk about DevOps, then we want to have a different behavior on an individual level. We want that everybody takes care and initiative and also takes responsibility on his own or on her own, and also takes care about their education. Then the second level is the team level. I guess, as I mentioned at the beginning, this agile principle, these self-organized teams is something that is extremely important in an agile or a DevOps transformation. And for that reason, you also need to behave differently in a team. You need to challenge each other, give open feedback. You need to have this famous psychological safety, that you feel safe enough to raise also concerns or risk, or to admit that you basically did a mistake. And last but not least, it's also from a leadership side, we need to have a complete different leadership style, which is no longer like this micromanagement, controlling in detail, but more kind of telling stories, giving a vision, giving boundaries, and trust that the team will do the right thing. So this culture side is, the technical side is important, culture side is at least as important as the technical side. Because it's often related to behavior change, I would say it's even more difficult to achieve, and it will just take time. So it's not something you can get from within a short amount of time. And then On the process side, we're using the SAFe framework. So this is the way how we do the work and also how to align the work on company side. And for that reason, we use the SAFe framework, the scaled agile framework. This is just, I know in the agile community, SAFe is sometimes seen quite critical. And the reason for that is probably as well that I saw quite some bad SAFe implementations as well, where it was SAFe according to the name, but more or less just the same hierarchical structure as before. And for that reason, I understand that, but I guess the benefit from SAFe, and this is also the reason why we've chosen that, is you have a common naming, you have a same understanding of the process, and you have this cadence given by the PI planning, the program increment plannings, where you can really synchronize inside the company. So this defines the process, and on a team level, and I guess that's most important, SAFe basically defines that you can work either according the Scrum methodology or according the Kanban methodology. But it is important that you follow one of the agile methods. Good. So this is those three areas: the technical side, the culture side, and the process side. This was basically our definition of how we define DevOps. And this is also the thing that we wanted to kind of give to the entire company, that we have a common understanding and a common way of doing that. When we realized that we need to have kind of a maturity check to encourage this learning. And back then we studied on the market if there's already something available, because we always say, like, if there's already something good available, we do not need to reinvent it. We can just use what's already good. And for that reason, we made a research on the market and also had to look like what kind of maturity models or maturity checks already exist. And there are hundreds of different models around the market. So but the issue, if you look a bit closer, and if you look at it, then you figure out they usually only covered one aspect of this, of DevOps. So either it was more about agile methodology, either it was more SAFe related, or only the cloud part of DevOps, or only the continuous delivery part. So even looking at many of those models, we couldn't find one that fitted good to our understanding of DevOps. And therefore we decided we want to implement one on our own. And when implementing such a model, we had some concepts in mind which seemed to us extremely important. And the first concept was that we always said, like, it needs to be a self-assessment. This is something the team needs to do, and the team knows best where they stand, and they also know best what the next good action is to improve their maturity. By designing this check, we always said, if you want to fill that out, this is a team activity. Usually teams do that in a retrospective. And for that reason, we also defined, like, we use a 6-figure scale going from 0 to 5. So you can do this 5th to 5 votings in the retrospective. And just when we first implemented it, I visited quite some team to see how it was working. And I remember one really interesting story when I was sitting in a team and we asked the question, or in DevOps, one important concept is that you have development people and operation people working close together and really being together responsible for that. And one of the questions was, do we work on eye level between operation people and development people? And then we made this 5th to 5 voting. And funny was, like, 1 to 3, everybody showed their figure. And funny was to see, like, all developers, they voted like a 5, saying, yes, we are absolutely on eye level together, while everybody coming from operation and doing more operation work, they voted the 0 to a maximum of a 2. And I guess this is exactly what we wanted to achieve, because it made this issue so obvious that you can discuss it. So you can, Scrum Master, as example, can take that up and can really discuss it with the team to say that. Now, if you do a self-assessment, then it's also important to know, or this is a consequence out of a self-assessment, that a self-assessment is never an objective value. So if you say like, how good do you think you are in this and this area, and you say, I guess it's a 3, then it is possible that next time you look at it, that you might give a complete different value. And for that reason, it is difficult to compare. So for example, we completely, or it is not possible to compare team A with team B, because it might be that team A is just giving themselves better values than team B. And this is okay, it doesn't matter. And I mentioned the Dunning-Kruger effect at the beginning, so that people that do not yet have good knowledge, they tend to overestimate their knowledge. And this is also something that we realized when looking at those teams. We had teams that gave quite high ranks on their maturity, so saying like a 4 or probably even a 5. And when they did the test again, or the check again, like half a year or a year later, they learned in meantime what they don't know, and for that reason they gave a lower value again. So this is fine, this is okay, because once again, the aim of the goal was to identify areas where you can improve and not to have a comparable value. And that's also something, if we say that this is the most important thing, then it's all about the actions. So if the idea of the check will give you kind of a rate along various areas where you have good maturity already, and where your maturity probably still has room for improvement. And what is important, or this is just the first thing, what is really important, that at the end of the day, if you finish the check, that you then discuss about what is our action that we would like to take from them, from the check. And this action should also flow back into the backlog of the team. So that you say, like, if you did a check every half a year, identify the area that you want to take the next step in your improvement, and then define this action in your backlog. And important to mention there as well is, since Swisscom is such a big company, we have also an extreme big variety of tools and technologies that are in place. So that means basically we have on one side already cloud native apps with a microservice architecture, which all is fine and all is perfect. And on the other side, we have NetNear IT, which is a legacy system implemented by a vendor that is 10 or 15 years old. And for that reason, like, the next maturity check or the next action might be completely different, because for this NetNear IT, it might never ever be possible to move into a cloud, but they can work on something else, on a different areas. And the last thing from a principle point of view is that we say, like, we want to share collaboration amongst the teams. And for that reason, we said, like, we always want to make all results public. So it's possible for everybody to see the rates that another team gave themselves. And the idea is that if you, for example, you're a team and you want to improve in continuous testing or test automation on one side, then it might be helpful for you to see other teams that are extremely advanced in this area, and to have contact information from those teams, because then you can start interacting with each other and learn from each other and help in the community, help that the entire maturity from all teams is starting to grow. Good. So these are the principles that we defined before implementing the maturity check. And we'll go now into more details about what the content of the check is. And this is probably also a time if you have questions up to now. So if you say like, there's something I do not really understand, or I want to get a bit more information about that, then this would be a perfect time to type it in, and then probably wait a couple of minutes. It's always a bit difficult if you sit alone in your office and wait for something to happen. Okay, so Stefan Steinbauer, he asks the question, ever considered not talking numbers for the scale, but t-shirt sizing? In fact, that's a really good idea. We didn't thought about that, and I guess we just went to the path of this face-to-5 votings, and then it's close to 0 to 5. But I guess this t-shirt sizing would be very interesting, because it would help that you do not compare each other. So very good idea. We haven't it didn't pop up on our side, yeah. And the face-to-5. Okay, yeah, thanks. Stefan likes the face-to-5 voting. That's good. And also from Pascal saying that everything makes sense and is also to his own experience. Okay. So then let's look a bit into the details, what the maturity check contains. And what's important to mention here is that we soon realized that there are always two dimensions that you need to cover. One dimension is the team and how the team kind of works together, how the culture in the team is, if they work according to Scrum or to Kanban. And then on the other side is the application, where you have more like the technical side of it. In case of is test automation possible, is continuous delivery possible, and so on. And we realized we have to separate those two checks. And the reason for that is pretty simple. One team can implement or can be responsible for several applications, and one application is probably more state of the art, and the other application is a bit more legacy style. And if you would kind of do the test or do the check only for the team, then it's always the question like, okay, we are pretty good in this application, but quite bad in that application. So what shall we do now? And to avoid this situation, we completely separated it and said, like, we have a team check, which everybody can do, even teams that do not develop software. So we also have like our team as an example, so a team of coaches. We do the team check as well, like every 6 months. This works perfectly fine. And then on the other side, we have a separate check, which you can do for one application. For each application, you can do an own check. And we start with the team side first. So what do we look? Oh, I always pressed the wrong button. Sorry about that. So looking at the team side first, and which dimensions that we would look at it. So the first thing is the way we work together in the team. And I mentioned this collaboration charter before, and this collaboration charter is describing the culture that we want to have. And in the check, we ask the team how good they already follow this collaboration charter. And on one side, this is also a chance to kind of remind the team, look, this is the behavior that we want to achieve, and we help them to reflect on that. This is one thing in working together. Self-organized teams are extremely important. I already mentioned that. And a very important point from our side as well is this continuous reflection. So if you're doing Scrum, it is all about retrospective. If you're doing Kanban, that's also fine, but then still take time to reflect your work and continuously think about how you can improve and how you can foster the way or working together. This is first dimension, working together. The next dimension is that the stuff that you implement has really clear value orientation. We want that implementing products, that you do that in a hypothesis-driven way. So really first think about what is the hypothesis and how can I test it as cheap as possible, and not, I mean, this is one of the big paradigm change from a classical project management to an agile way of working. You do want to test your hypothesis as fast and as cheap as possible. You need to have one product owner, and the reason why I write one product owner is because sometimes we had the situation where team had like 10 stakeholders and they all had different ideas, and then you always have an issue with priorities. So having one product owner is something that is extremely important, and you need to have a clear product vision. The next dimension is the team setup. And there, one very important thing, which was also, at least in Swisscom side, this was also one of the paradigm shifts, is you want to have a constant team setup. It's not a project team that is building up and then after like 6 months or a year, you completely change the team. You want to have this constant team. Working together over a long period of time, because only if this is the case, you can build up trust and you can really learn and also kind of remember what you did a year ago and still benefit from this learning. I mentioned already that we want to have the responsibility of development and operation in the same team, so that this is really, if you run it, if you develop it, you also run the application. And we want to have the so-called T-shaped engineers, where we do not want to have these absolute specialist roles, but we want to have people that know a lot about something and a bit of everything. So to have really this T-shaped skill structure. Then from a way of working, another area that we look at in the team check is that you have a transparent backlog. So for everybody, and this is for the whole company, everybody can see which team is working on which backlog items, that you see what comes next, what is there. You want to have short implementation cycles, so ideally 2 weeks, that you within 2 weeks you come to the next potentially shippable product increment. And another thing also for the business units that depend on the IT, you want to have reliable commitments so that IT or the business really can count on what IT says. And the last dimension on team side is really the ecosystem. So the ultimate goal is to have complete autonomous teams so that they can act and have complete independent from each other and implement their software. In fact, especially if you have like an older architecture, then you often still have dependencies in the architecture. And dependencies means as well that other teams depend on you and your service. And for this reason, it is extremely important that you know your dependencies and you actively manage them so that you do not start to optimize in your team, which might lead to an overall disadvantage for the company. And these are the dimensions on the team side. On the other side, going to the application side, and this is now really per application. So one team many applications probably. And from the application point of view, we go back to these capabilities that I showed in the reference model. And the first capability that we look at, this is collaborative development. So this is really then hard code. We want that you commit daily to the baseline, that you have all code versioned in a version control. You commit daily to the baseline, and every commit should trigger a build, and this build should be automated. This is it's already quite difficult for some teams to achieve. So it's all the DevOps check that we have here. It's difficult to reach the highest numbers here, but this is what we want to achieve with collaborative development. Then, of course, it's about continuous testing. So we want that once you checked in the code and the build is done, that it triggers automatically a test of the system, so that if you check it in, test is run, and you get more or less immediately kind of the feedback if the test result was successful or not. And in the ideal case, not only your tests are automated, but also that your test data and test scenario are versioned as well. So if you go back to an earlier version, that you also have the tests still available for this earlier version. Then the next thing is continuous release and deployment. So the idea there is, if you have the build automated, if you have the test automated, then of course the deployment itself is also automated. Ideally, you can really self-service. You have a self-service deploy of any version, so that you say, like, I want to test this version of the code. You press on a button, the build will automatically be triggered. Probably even the environment is going up, and it is deployed to this environment. One important thing is, of course, that you can have zero downtime deployments and blue-green deployments. So you start doing the deployment on one instance, changing the load balancer, switching to the other instance, so that customers do not realize that you do a deployment and all. And the last thing is this idea of these feature toggles, that you have those feature toggles implemented, so you can basically implement new features or release new features to production, but you do not switch that active yet, so that you can still at the later point in time, for example, if the marketing initiative is started, that you can then change the feature toggle and implement or release this feature as well. If you look at some DevOps literature, then for some DevOps stops here. So if you have this continuous delivery pipeline implemented, they think like it's good and it's all done. I guess we took it even a bit further. Yeah, exactly. So we took it even a bit further and said, like, continuous monitoring on one side is also something that is extremely important. So on one side, that each and everybody has access to all monitoring information on our system, that you monitor also all environments, not only the production environment, but that you also monitor your test environments. So in case you test a new feature that you see, for example, if memory consumption is affected by a new release, you would already see that on your test system, and you can already react on that. And for that reason, this monitoring and the monitoring scenarios, they are something you need to consider already during the development, and this is not something you do at the later point in time. And then the last thing is this continuous customer feedback and optimization. In the Phoenix project, also in the DevOps handbook, Jin Kim is describing these 3 ways. So that you, and one of the 3 ways is to get feedback back as soon as possible. And this is something that is also really important, and the capability that you need to achieve as well. And so you should know what is kind of the expected customer behavior, and then you also monitor this customer behavior. You should establish feedback channels. These feedback channels can even be that you listen to the traffic on social media and see if you get reactions in case you implement a new feature or something like that. And last but not least, you can also work with canary releasing so that you start, if you do a release, you start with a smaller group and then increase the size of the group so you can get the feedback if the customer behave in the way that you want to do that. So this is the last dimension. And as a last thing before we come to the Q&A, I would just like to give you some screenshots so that you can see how this maturity check, how it is implemented and how it looks like. The important thing is I mentioned that it's a self-assessment, and for that reason, we also want to have like the entry level to this check as low as possible. And for that reason, we just implemented it as a tool. So you can just go in our network, you can go open the tool, and you will get then to a team overview site where you see the team fitness. So this is the team check. And on the other side, you have the application fitness. You see like a spider diagram of how you kind of rated yourself the last time. You see the actions that you wanted to take. And then you can just click on a new survey to create a new instance of your survey. And then I showed you before this different dimensions. For each dimension, we kind of described, or we gave a sentence that we want to get the rating, where people can then do not agree at all or fully agree to this statement. And to give a bit of a hint what we mean by this sentence, we gave like additional checkboxes. So to say, like, if you want to have the full rating, if you want to go to a level 5, then you should consider this, and that aspect. And if you're probably more on a 3 level, it is about this and that that you should achieve. We did that on both levels, on the team side and also on the application side. And this is how the team can just check in. They can write their comments down below. So if they come back at a later stage, they still know what it was meant. And one important thing as well is some people said, like, it might be that I'm not able to answer, or that I'm technically not able to do what was asked in the question. For example, if you cannot lift your application to the cloud, then cloud-related questions do not make sense at all. So we gave also the possibility to switch a rating off, to say like, okay, in our case, this is really not relevant, and therefore we switch the question off. I guess we implemented this check about 3 years ago. We implemented the first version of it. We run it around 500 or 600 times, realized what we need to improve. And this, what I showed you now, is the second version of it, so where we further improved it. And from a result point of view, what is really nice to see that for teams that already have a high maturity level, as well as for teams that are still quite inexperienced, they both benefit from the check. So on one side, by detecting blind spots, I had a chat with one team, and I considered them as quite mature. So they did some really amazing stuff. And the person I'm talking to, he told me, like, it was great to do this check, because due to the check, they figured or they identified the blind spot, and they had a chance to implement it, and it was leading to even more business value for them. And on the other side, it is also extremely helpful for an inexperienced team, because they start with this check, they start to experience what we mean by DevOps, what we talk about when we talk about DevOps. And for that reason, they could start identifying actions which helps them on their DevOps journey. So that was all from my side. Thank you very much. And I guess now would be a good time for your questions.
So, thank you for your talk. While we wait for Pascal to write some more questions, I have one question on my mind, and it's, are you a Scrum or a Kanban person?
Me personally?
Yes.
Okay, I believe in Kanban. I guess Kanban is in most cases, or in many cases, it's a good way. I really like Kanban. And I guess it's a bit more difficult to follow, probably. Because if Scrum is more precise, more strict, and therefore easier to start with. But if you really follow the Kanban rules and principles, then I guess I would prefer Kanban.
Okay.
Oh, but it always depends on the team situation. So it's not a general, but me personally, it's...
this is why I asked personally.
Yeah.
So let's get into this Q&A mode. So
just show it.
Yeah.
Okay. The software. This is a good question about the software, and it probably comes together with another question if it's customer made or bought. And the situation at Swisscom is we have quite a lot of apprentices doing their apprenticeship inside Swisscom. And what we have is like we have a team of apprentices working together on software. And we gave this as a project to the apprentice. So they implemented it from scratch, and it was kind of a combination. It was helpful for us because we wanted to have this maturity check. And on the other side, it was an extremely good exercise for them to get into this and learn about this. But I don't know what the basis technology behind this. I don't know about that. I was more acting as a product owner in this sense, kind of giving the user stories, testing the functionality, but I'm not so technical so that I could kind of really follow all the details how they implemented it. Yeah.
Okay. So Pascal also wants to know, these were questions
how much
from
time?
Pascal. And how much time do you need for one retrospective?
Yeah, exactly. So the time it takes to go through all those questions and fill that out, we figured out if you do it the first time, so you never did it before, and you need to start to understand the questions and discuss it the first time, then it usually takes 90 minutes, so that you need 1.5 hours to really go through one aspect. So either the application side or the team health side. If you're more experienced and if you kind of do it the second or the third time, then you already know, you already have your base evaluation, you already know what it's all about, and then you can shorten that to probably 45 minutes to an hour around this time period.
How much do you have cycle time, or like how often do you have a retro?
I mean, the retro, we encourage teams to do a retro every 2 weeks, so after they ended the sprint. But this maturity check, we recommend to do it like every 6 months around that, so twice a year. If a team, twice a year for the team side and twice a year for the application side. So from this point of view, it will be 4 times a year. And I know that some do it only once a year. So we do not give like hard kind of guidance. You have to do it every this and that. So it's more like a recommendation from our side to say like around once or twice every year is about the right time. We think for the right,
So, and Pascal
How
also,
long
yeah, how long takes it? How long does it take?
Yeah, on it, and now the issue is because we worked with this apprentice, and they did an amazing job. This is really, they did really great work. But for that reason, it was probably a bit longer than I expected at the beginning. I guess it took us, at the end of the day, it took us around half a year. But we didn't implement it like full time. So it was always, they also have like school beside working and so on. So it was like not, but the duration, so the cycle time, it took us half a year to get it ready. Yeah. This second version, the first version was, we built it, the first version on top of I don't remember what it was, of another survey tool, and it was much faster there, but the user experience was not so nice. And this was also the reason why we implemented it in a different way. Yeah.
And when did you realize that the user experience was not that good? Was that feedback,
in
or
fact,
did you just see it? That's
it was kind of both. I mean, it was, looking at it, I was like, that doesn't look nice, and it was also the feedback that we got. But then on the other side, a tool is a tool. I mean, it's not, and the benefit of the check was not the tool but the questions. And we said, like, as a first version, and to also kind of gain further experience and in a sense of an MVP, we said, like, we rather go with a not so nice tool and have it already out and in implementation. And then in a second, if we see that it works and if we kind of proven our hypothesis that we can help teams with this, then we can take the next step, and then we can improve the UI and the user experience from this. Yeah.
okay. And I think he also wants to know if the tool is also available for other companies, or
Yeah. This is something I'm really glad that I got the okay from Swisscom. Okay, now I have to differentiate between the content and the tool itself. The tool itself, I didn't have a chance to check that with the team that implemented it, with this apprentice team. I need to check that. What we want to do is we want to open source the content, so all our questions with all our check boxes. We want to open source that. We are not under the free common license, Creative Common license. Sorry, Creative Common license. We are not yet there. We just need to do some polishment, making it nice, and especially also get rid of all the Swisscom internal terms that do not make sense for people outside. But we really want to publish that, to do that. And if somebody is interested to get the results, then I guess best would be to contact me on LinkedIn. Just connect with. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Send me a direct message, and as soon as it is available, I will send it to you. Yeah.
Oh, great. So there is a question from Rene. How are the action items defined? By whom in collaboration with the team? Lot of questions.
Yeah. So what is really important is we always say, like, the action items, they are defined by the team. It's the team's responsibility, and we believe that the team knows best where to take their next step in the maturity. Now, what we do have, but this is not something we do in the maturity check, but we do have kind of a vision from our IT department, and the vision was, for example, just to give you an example from the past, the vision was to change. We had, when we started with this DevOps journey, we had like 4 releases a year. So you only had the chance to implement new software 4 times a year. And then this release cycle this was a huge event. It started Friday evening and we finished by Monday morning, and about 100 developers were on call or doing actions of deploying all this stuff. And at this point of time, it was a clear strategy from the IT department that we said, we want to do more releases. We want to have monthly releases on one side. And on the other side, we want to be able to release our software over one night. So from like Wednesday evening, 6 o'clock, until Thursday morning, 5 o'clock, we want to be able to release the software. And this was a clear target, and it was kind of an objective from a company to all the teams. And for that reason, teams, they had to invest in deployment automation. So this came kind of as a target, but this was not out of the maturity check, but this is then more from a strategic goal way of things, how we did it. And to achieve the acceptance by the team, I guess since the team was able to define their items by themselves, they also stand behind it. So they really they cover, or we have the acceptance from the team because they define the actions they want to take.
Mm-hmm. And so we ran out of questions in the stream, but I have another question. Look, I have now this plant there, so that it's also looking nice here.
Yeah.
I have to take it away so I can see my screen.
You had a bigger plant before in the rehearsal. You had like the big one, rehearsal, so I missed that.
Yeah, but it's it's never for those of you who haven't been at the rehearsal, which means everybody who's watching, is I had to share my couch with a palm tree, which was looking good, but it was a little bit uncomfortable. I was wondering, in DevOps, it's, I think one of the things at some point what you meet is when you have bigger and more complex environments, is that there is a difference in the cycle speed. Not talking about one sprint is 2 weeks, but like you said, there can be, like, for some teams, DevOps means one release a year. These are the poor guys who still work with a mainframe. And then there are others who would need to release multiple times a week. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wonder if this maturity check did also help you in synchronizing this, or if this had an impact on the maturity check, if it had an impact on this whole complexity topic.
Yeah. So the management of the complexity, so to make sure that we have that in time and so on, the management of the complexity is more done in the scaled agile framework rituals, where we, with the PI plannings and checking that everybody is delivering to the same cadence. So this is more on a safe context, but the complexity is also due to these tightly coupled systems. And what we want to encourage people in the maturity check is that they invest in changing the way the systems are linked with each other, so that you have like concepts in place, that you start to have more loosely coupled systems. And I mean, there are design patterns around how to do that, but this is just hard work. I mean, you need to go interface after interface, need to look at it. How can I make it a bit less tightly coupled together? And this is something that we have in the maturity check to encourage people to invest time and energy in getting a more loosely coupled architecture. But this is something, it will take time. I guess that's something that will take like another 3 to 5 years until we can really be at least better. I guess it's the same with DevOps. It's a never-ending journey. I guess you can always improve, and then there's a new technology, and you can look into that and probably even get better results out of that. So,
We still have one more question from Pascal. So, what are you proudest?
I guess the thing that really makes me proud, if I hear or have experience with teams and they say, because of the maturity check, we took a further step and we implement something new. And these are always those moments I feel extremely proud, because I just realized, so yes, it worked. The team took a look at the maturity check and they learned, they started to improve, and they took a next step in their DevOps journey. And these are always the instances that I'm really happy and I'm really proud that it worked out. Yeah.
Okay. So one last question from Stefan again. That's me. Imagine that I do not look like I look like, that I'm the good fairy, and I would grant you one wish. And it's one wish for this maturity check thing. What would be this thing you want to have most?
I guess what I wish is that people keep on using it, so that they do not start to become tired and start, kind of no longer investing in getting better over time. And I guess this is my wish. So people continue using it, not for the sake of the test or the maturity check, but just to become better every day.
Very Kaizen, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we are about to wrap it up, which means I'm gonna tell a little story before I say my last thank you and bye-bye to you. The story is that today we are watching Martin, but next week you can extend your DevOps horizon even more on Friday, because we are having developers live week from Monday to Friday, from security to DevOps. There are a lot of interesting talks also from DevSecOps, which is another way to go in the DevOps journey. So be there or be square. And you can save your spot now on wearedevelopers.com/live. And now you can see that I cannot draw a circle. But I want to, Pascal said, thanks for your contribution, Martin. I want to concur with him. I want to say also thank you. That was really interesting. And it was also good news that you also want to share back to the community with that. And this sounds like something I would be the first person to vote for. Let's implement it at our place too. And yeah, if you let me know by the time you do it open source, we can make a follow-up webinar and have a look at what is there, how to use it, and how to contribute, because this is most of the time why you make stuff open source, so that you are working together as a team. So
perfect.
Thank you, Martin.
Yeah. Thank you.
To Switzerland. And for everybody who was watching, thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.